Alright, hello once again. I am here with another video response, and, once again to Dark Inception, who had asked, who your top 5 favorite Spider-Man villains were, and I decided I'd do him one better. I'm not gonna give him my top 5, I'm going to give him my top 10. And I think I have some choices in here that a lot of people probably wouldn't have picked normally. But, yeah, whatever. I'm unique, I guess. And, we're gonna start this off with number 10, which is the Lizard. I actually know a lot of people don't seem to like the Lizard for whatever reason, because they don't consider him a proper villain, or they don't consider him to be this or that, but he is. Even though it's a very much Jekyll and Hyde scenario at times, well, once his mutation advances at least. See, that's the other thing I like about the Lizard, is the different takes on him, especially since, see, at first, when Doc Connors first turned into the Lizard in Amazing Spider-Man number 6, when he took the serum, even after he was a full Lizard, he was aware of who he was, and that something was happening to him, and that something was wrong. He was aware of his mind even changing. He ran off. He actually transformed right in his own home before running off. And so, it's a very interesting thing, because it's literally, when he first turned into the Lizard, it was his mind slowly being twisted by that serum toward a more reptilian nature, a more evil nature, but it was genuinely his mind. Just like when he would turn back, he was, him. And it was quite interesting, and occasionally it would jump back and forth though between he'd have like vague memories of what he did, and a lot of times he just passed them off as nightmares and wasn't aware that he had ever been the Lizard. Other times it's like, oh no, you are, he knew he was the whole time, the memories were just repressed. And I don't know. I honestly liked it quite a bit. So there's that. And then, later on the mutation advances and he becomes a lot more feral and a lot more vicious, and he, actually starts killing people. And it's a very interesting character. It's a very sad character, because while Peter does no needs to stop this guy, at the same time it's his friend. It just happens to be his friend with massive strength and teeth and claws that are trying to rip him apart. See, that was another thing about the Lizard, is that it was, even though it was his friend, he was genuinely trying to kill him. He wasn't even like a lot of the other villains who, I'll do whatever I have to do to stop you from interfering with my plan, but the plan comes first. A lot of times with Connors, instinct would take over, and, he'd just do whatever, set the plan aside, and focus on, killing. And then, I don't know, I guess they altered the mutation again, and then, it was almost like a side that was regressed, and he'd actually start turning into the Lizard unless he started taking a serum, and, all that good stuff. And, he was intelligent again, he could speak. I honestly don't necessarily have a problem with that, because it's pretty clear that this mutation can shift over time. Especially since, if I'm not mistaken, that was the result of an attempted cure. But, I like the Lizard, I do. I find him to be a very interesting villain, and I think he's got a very interesting dynamic with Peter and Spider-Man. So, moving on to number 9. This is one that I know doesn't appear on hardly anyone's list, and it's a shame, because he has so much potential. But I understand why some people don't like him, because even though he has a lot of potential, he doesn't really live up to it. And that's the Shocker. Yeah, Hermann Schulz. Now, I know a lot of people don't like him because they think that he's not terribly special. Some people brand him as an Electro ripoff just because of his name. They don't even look at his powers. I don't know. But he is a seriously underrated villain. When you look at the Vibro Shock gauntlets that he built, yes, Vibro Shock, vibration shocks, sonics. It's not electricity like some people like to try to think. Um, those things are actually pretty dangerous for multiple reasons, and it's not just the impact blast that they have whenever they hit something. It's they have a very wide range of settings, and I mean they can go from an intense focused blast, which he does use, to a wider, more sweeping thing to actually just cause things to violently shake. And that's dangerous for so many reasons. He can bring down an entire building full of people that way. He can, blast a hole through a cement wall that way. But even if he doesn't hit even if he hits someone who's like super strong, you know, even if he hits someone who can take one of those blasts, just the sheer vibration and what that would do to your inner ear, the way it throws off your equilibrium. I mean, when he's fought Spider-Man in the past, one shot actually throws off his agility even. One shot would make it even, successively easier to hit and damage your target. So that first hit, you just can't let that happen. I do think that he's a massively underrated villain in terms of potential. And he's also underrated in terms of intelligence. Every time I see him, he's like some sort of brainless thug that just does whatever. But I mean, he was able to make that stuff. He was able to know he'd need that suit to protect him from the effects of his own vibro shock. He's not stupid. He's not the smartest villain that Spider-Man's ever encountered, but he's not stupid. I think that's another reason why some people just kind of tend to pass over him. He's not outstanding in any single area per se, but I do think that he had a lot of potential and a pretty interesting attack method, and I really think that he was severely underused, in my opinion. Now moving on to number 8. Number 8, I had a hard time. I have to place him here because he is. I'll explain in a second. Number 8 is Venom, and I know some people are probably going to be a little pissy that he's so low on my list. I debated whether or not to even put him on this list. I was going to actually keep him off the list and maybe bump up, I don't know. Bump up another villain like Morbius, maybe. But, nah, Venom, I put him here because he started a villain, and Eddie Brock's Venom specifically, he always kind of teetered the line, between hero, or rather anti-hero and villain. Gargan's Venom is so-so. The Flash's Venom I really don't like. I do not like the whole concept of, especially since it's like just part of an oversaturation thing, and they've somehow turned him into a vigilante hero type. I mean, I know some people like it because, hey, it's Flash, and Flash do it. No, though, it just does not jive with the title of Venom. It does not jive with the symbiote. All that good stuff. But I do like Venom as a villain especially, and an anti-hero, because, he's always on that line, and so Spider-Man, in the times when he's actually forced to team up with him, he never knows when he's going to turn on him, and he especially has no indication because Venom, because the symbiote was bonded with Peter, knows all his powers, has duplicated his powers, and knows how to hide itself from his spider sense. So even if Venom's going to turn on him, he won't know it until he does, which is why Peter's always on edge around him. Venom's got quite the temper, and pretty much anything can set him off. Peter's always had to try to, get him to not kill whenever he works with him, and Venom's sometimes not happy about that, and that has pissed him off. But then again, at the same time, Eddie Brock, and as much as he can be villainous, he really doesn't want to be a villain. He really does want to try to help people, or as he puts it, protect the innocent, punish the wicked. Kind of like a spider punisher with super strength almost. But, he's got his definition of wicked and innocent can be a bit skewed at times. I mean, sometimes someone is wicked if they've done so much as, a minor crime. I mean, like, not even a major, necessarily a major one, at least in terms of Marvel scale, but, I mean, even street thugs, there are times that he's beaten them near to death, and, yeah, it's kind of, honestly, it's a lot of, it reminds me a lot of what Dan Slott is trying to make Spider-Rock into. And I think that's one reason why some people are actually responding positively to it, because it's the same dynamic that made Venom popular. So, it might be successful, but for all the wrong reasons. Well, we're not going to analyze that right now. But yeah, number 8 was definitely Venom. And now on to number 7, Electro. Now, Electro is another villain that apparently a lot of people don't seem to like. He doesn't have a definitive arc. Oh, wait. You know what? That's a lie. People did like him until he was cast in the new movie. Seriously, though. But, I mean, they said he doesn't have a definitive arc. I disagree. I think he's got 2 that are really good. There's one where he actually literally gets pretty much power equivalent to that of a god, and Spider-Man has to build an insulated suit to fight him. I think the reason people say it's not a proper arc, though, is because it's only like a couple issues long, and it doesn't have like an official title like some arcs do. But though that story I really liked, and Light the Night was extremely good because it was an amazing character study of not only Electro, but Peter Parker as Spider-Man, and believe it or not, just a criminal on the street who was trying so hard to not be ignored. A lot of it has to do with whether or not you're, even seen, whether people are ignoring you, whether or not you're making any kind of an impact, the fear of being just forgotten or hated or, ignored. People almost treating you like you're not there, like you never made an impression on anyone. And that actually is in a lot of Electro's backstory. His mother was extremely overprotective, didn't have a lot of faith in him, didn't really think he was going to amount to too much. But as a result, unlike becoming abusive like some parents do, she dealt with it in another way. She was overprotective of him and doting on him. And Max Dillon said that there were so many times people would, just seem so, it was like he was invisible, like he was a nobody, like nobody, would even know his name. He was so nervous whenever he tried to talk to other kids that he just started stuttering and they'd make fun of him. And, and now that he was Electro, he was going to be somebody. He was going to make his mark. He was going to make sure no one could ever ignore him again. And, while there is a slightly sympathetic bent to that, at the same time, there's not. Because another way he could have done that, another way he could have made people love him, was, he could have done the opposite. He could have actually become a hero. A hero with electric powers, he could have done quite a bit. Would have been loved. People would have, especially had he done the whole Fantastic Four thing, not, given no one any reason per se to not trust him. And honestly, he didn't, though, just because he felt like people owed him. It wasn't enough that he wanted to be known. He didn't want to be loved. He wanted to be feared. He wanted to make people feel as low as they made him feel. Okay? He wanted payback against the entire world. Which is why, while there's a slightly sympathetic angle to him, he's not a sympathetic character in the least. And that's one thing that I do like about him. He's a very interesting, fairly dynamic character. And I do remember, too, how after, what was it, Spider-Man 2, the game, Enter Electro for the PS1, everyone kept saying, oh man, I really wish they'd use him in a movie, how come he's not in the movie? And when each of the Spider-Man movies came out, Spider-Man 1 had the Green Goblin, okay, Spider-Man 2, oh, I hope it's Electro, I hope it's Electro, and up it's Doc Ock, okay, Spider-Man 3, oh, I hope it's Electro, oh, I hope it's Electro, oh, I hope it's Electro. I remember people wanted Electro so bad. Just like they wanted Lizard so bad. for those Spider-Man movies. And then when they reboot the series and they use the Lizard, nobody wants the Lizard. He's such a horrible villain. Nobody wants Electro. He's such a horrible villain now. It's hilarious. And I'm at my 15-minute limit, so I'm going to split this up into 2 parts, unless I might do this all in one shot on my other channel as well. Okay, now, this is sad. We haven't even gotten halfway through the list. Number 6, I'm going to kind of skim through a little bit, because, well, reasons. Number 6, for the sake of time mostly, is Kraven. Kraven the Hunter. I really, really like Kraven. It's a very interesting dynamic that he has, because he basically has absolutely no reason for going after Peter other than the fact that he can. Okay? He's a Spider-Man, and pretty much the only reason he wants him is purely because he had the audacity to name himself after an animal. You know, he decided he was going to hunt him. But see, as time goes by, he sort of becomes obsessed with him. He starts to see him as a personification of a demon that he believes tormented and killed his mother. A demon who apparently happened to be according to him, a spider demon. And so his obsession, you know, starts to come to a head over time, and that's the beautiful part of it. It comes to a head over time. And it's not after just the first defeat, you know. Kraven's not like, oh, you know, you beat me once, now I have to keep going forever and ever until I... Yeah, he does, you know, kind of knock back at him a few times at first, purely, you know, to get back at him, but it's after humiliating defeat that Kraven starts to realize, or starts to think, that this guy, seeing as he can never seem to actually beat him, it's not animal, it's not human, it's, you know, it's also partly because he has so much faith in his own skill that he just flat out refuses to believe that, you know, someone could, you know, best him like that so easily. And so, you know, the obsession does start to build up there, and it does build over time, and then it peaks with Kraven's Last Hunt, which is an amazing arc. And also something that, frankly, Mr. Slott's trying to replicate and doing a poor job of doing. But we won't get into that. But yeah, Kraven is a very interesting character, and I think that people really don't give him enough credit. He has, you know, and a lot of people seem to think he's just a guy, but he does have enhanced strength. He does have enhanced senses. He's very similar to Wolverine in terms of actual power, except he got his through magical potions rather than mutation. And obviously doesn't sprout claws or heal instantly, but, you know. But in terms of, like, physical strength and sense and enhanced senses, he's got a lot in common with Wolverine. So there's that. Number 5 is definitely Scorpion. Scorpion fascinates me, simply because, I mean, I love the fact that they didn't, like, go overboard with his suit, at least at first. The suit that they put on Matt Gargan, excuse me, the suit that they put on Matt Gargan was, interesting, to say the least. It wasn't terribly flashy. It was just a plain green with some stripes in it. I'm not even sure if they were supposed to be actual, just, you know, stripes, or if they were supposed to be, like, armor plates. I'm not sure. But it was pretty interesting, and it had the tail, and it had a psychic neural link to his tail, to his, you know, tail to his brain. He got enhanced strength, and he was even given especially enhanced strength in his hands to replicate the strength of a scorpion's pincers, without actually strapping giant pincers onto the suit. So I actually thought that was kind of clever. Then, as, you know, standards kind of got more lax, they finally put a blade on the tail. Then they went really, like, space agey. I don't remember if they ever did it in the comics, or if that was just, like, in the cartoon and in the game. But the weird thing with like the purple and green and the giant, and it was almost like quasi-robotic, and the tail, had like the giant laser cannon that would sprout out of it. I think they did something sort of similar in the comics, but I don't know if it was quite that space agey. I don't quite recall. I'd have to go back and read. But especially the older Scorpion, oh my god. He was just a beast, and it was honestly the first time I have ever seen Spider-Man wind up with so much battle damage that, his suit was ripped, his mask was ripped. When he got home and took his costume off, his eye was like completely swollen shut. He had scratches on his face and his arms. It was honestly the most damaged I had ever seen them do Spider-Man. Especially back in the Silver Age, that was something that didn't really happen much. I mean, sure, you'd get hit, there was the occasional black eye or whatever, but, for him to have it, like swollen shut, cut, his suit was all shredded, he had big rips in it, he even had a tear in the mask right under his eye, he had, he was actually put through brick walls, it was a brutal fight that he had with Scorpion when he first appeared. And the fact that, that combined with the fact that this is J. Jonah Jameson's monster, and Jameson, has to try so desperately to keep people from knowing that this is his doing. That, I think, is especially interesting. It adds a very interesting dynamic to the character and to Jameson and Jameson's relationship with Spider-Man as well. Okay, now moving on to number 4, we have the Kingpin. Now, I know a lot of people get really, specifically fans of certain other characters get really upset when you classify the Kingpin as a Spider-Man villain, when in fact he's actually supposed to be a Daredevil villain, or he's supposed to be a whatever. But the Kingpin is a Marvel Universe villain in general. There's no character that really has exclusivity to him. I know a lot of people think that Daredevil does, primarily because that's why they used him in the movie. They used him in the movie because of a fairly unique tie, true, but the Kingpin has screwed with a lot of people's lives. He really has, and he's definitely screwed Peter's quite a bit. I believe that Peter actually wound up fighting him almost completely by accident. The Kingpin had never really been on his radar until pretty much a random sequence of events. But the stuff that the Kingpin can do, especially since, Peter is torn when fighting him, because at the one hand, he's a villain, and he is quite powerful, but at the same time, he's also human, so he's got human weaknesses, so Peter has to kind of gauge how much he has to hold back his strength, which is difficult, especially since the Kingpin, while being just a flesh and blood man, and being, huge, is well over 300 pounds of pure muscle. He bulks up intentionally to look fat, but it's actually muscle for the most part under there. He's got some fat, yes, but he's got a crap ton of muscle. If I recall, the guy can lift almost half a ton, so he's extremely strong. And oh my god, the stuff that he has done, both physically and, emotionally and behind the scenes. Wilson Fisk is a serious bastard. I will say, though, in terms of portrayal, I actually did like Michael Clark Duncan. This is off topic and kind of off Spider-Man, but I actually did like Michael Clark Duncan as the Kingpin. I thought that he kind of put out the persona very well, the vibe that the Kingpin puts out. And I will also give props to the film crew for handling the whole weight issue very well. Because when he has that coat on, he does look kind of round and flabby and not very, chiseled, which Michael Clark Duncan is. And then you find out later on that it's because of that jacket, and when he takes it off, the jacket's actually really padded and underneath it he's ripped. I think that's actually a pretty unique way of handling the whole, pure muscle under all that thing without, without having to go weirdly digital or, just kind of fake it. But I don't know, I liked it. But yeah, Kingpin definitely is a constant thorn in Peter's side and in a lot of people's side, and he's definitely way up there. Number 3, I almost begrudgingly admit that he's even on the list anymore because of recent developments, and I do not count recent developments toward my reasoning for liking him because, if anything, they made me like him less. But number 3 is Dr. Octopus, Doc Ock. Doc Ock is quite interesting because, again, he's a flesh and blood human, and Peter does have to take that into account, but at the same time, he's got these titanium arms, swinging and whipping around that are obscenely strong, obscenely powerful. And again, Peter has to deal with those and apply the appropriate strength there. But then when it comes to actually hitting Ock, he's got to definitely dial it back, but that puts him in a vulnerable position because he's holding back, and those arms, on the other hand, and Ock, as a result, is not going to hold back. Then there's the whole intellect aspect. Dr. Octopus is an incredibly intelligent man. And, Peter has to really work to figure out what Ock is doing and how to undo it. And sometimes he even can't and has to pretty much take the brute force approach. So Doc Ock is actually a very interesting opponent for Spider-Man. And I know I'm kind of skimming over him, but y'all get it. I definitely did not like Spider-Man 2's Doc Ock, though. I want to point that out, just because he didn't really act like Ock. He was completely sympathetic. He was, wisecracking and sarcastic. He was pretty much the way Spider-Man should have been, to be perfectly honest. And, I don't know, he just didn't have that whole, I deserve to rule you all because I am your superior thing. It was more, just a matter of personal pride that made him do what he did. Okay, now moving on to number 2, the Green Goblin. Yeah, I know who's number 1 of the Green Goblin's number 2, but let me finish. Specifically, Harry's Goblin. Now, this is a very interesting dynamic that Peter and Harry have. Because, Harry is his best friend. Harry, was his roommate, his best friend, his closest, companion for quite a while. But then Harry, he started, falling into a bit of a depression because Mary Jane seemed a lot more disinterested in him, his girlfriend, and frankly a lot more interested in Peter. And although, he tried to not blame Peter for that because Peter wasn't, exactly necessarily encouraging her, the jealousy did rear up, so that caused problems there. So there was stress there. Then there was his dad kind of dumping on him. And, Harry just seriously fell into drugs. And that was a very interesting story arc, but that's the story for another day. But the drug-addled mind of Harry Osborn, though, is what led him to believe that his father was actually a good man, and Spider-Man was the evil man, even though he knew that his father was the Green Goblin. And it's what inspired him to take on the persona of the Goblin. As the Goblin, Harry can hit he's very conniving, almost as much as his father was. Some people say more so. I say not quite, because Norman knew what Harry knew. Norman just didn't have as much time to act on what Harry knew. And then it turns out that Norman was the one pulling the strings, even for Harry a lot of times. So, but I honestly like Harry's Goblin for that dynamic. He knows who his family is. He knows how to hurt him. He knows at the same time he's his best friend. You wouldn't hurt your best friend, would you? That kind of angle. And honestly, the way he screwed with even Peter, with Peter's head, almost as much as Norman did. It was very interesting, and it was a very chilling aspect that this was almost like a family demon, especially when you consider the other guys that took on the Green Goblin mantle were nowhere near this level. They were straight up posers compared to the Osborns. And, the whole sins of the father thing was a dynamic that was explored, and whether or not they're inherited, and it's creepy stuff. And I think it's really good. Now, I'm going to have to breeze through number 1, but it should be kind of obvious why I picked him. Number 1, in any form, whether it be well, any form you care to name, Norman Osborn, whether it's just as Norman Osborn, whether it's as the Green Goblin, whether it's as the Iron Patriot, which was kind of stupid, but even then he was, wow. Norman Osborn is legit one of the worst villains I have ever read. I mean, not like bad, I mean like good bad, okay? He is one of the most wicked people that I've read in a comic book. He rivals the Joker, definitely. In the way he has hurt Peter, and the way he has messed with his life, and the way that he has found to, stomp on him. It's incredible. Anyways, I'm going to have to cut it short there. I might expand a little bit more on it later, but I'm running out of time. I don't want to turn it into a 3-parter just for a 2-minute explanation. So I will catch you guys later. See ya.